Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I never meant to hear it. I wasn't snooping, wasn't trying to listen in, but sometimes the truth finds you whether you're looking for it or not. It was a Friday night. Donna had her friends over, a group of people she always seemed so comfortable with. They were in the living room, drinking wine, laughing. The kind of laughter that feels like a private club, like you missed the joke and you're not meant to ask about it. I was in the kitchen rinsing plates, half listening, and then I heard her voice. I don't know how I do it. Frank is just so useless sometimes. Laughter erupted. Real laughter. The kind that says we all know exactly what you mean. I froze, dish in hand. Useless. I didn't know what she had been talking about. Maybe it was something small, like how I forgot to pick up the dry cleaning or how I always mess up the grocery list. Or maybe it was something bigger, something that had been sitting between us for a long time. Maybe it was all of it. I waited. I waited for her to soften it, to laugh and say she was just joking. But she didn't. She just kept talking, moving on to something else like she hadn't just stabbed me right in the gut. At first, I wasn't angry. What I felt was humiliation, a slow creeping heat in my chest, a feeling of being exposed. I had spent years trying to be a good husband, trying to do things right, but right there, in my own house, I was nothing but a joke. And then, a realization hit me. This wasn't the first time. I stood at the sink, gripping the edge so tight my knuckles went white. My chest felt heavy, but not in an explosive way. Not anger, not yet. It was something colder, something deeper, like a sinking weight in my stomach, pulling everything down with it. The laughter from the living room still echoed in my ears, but now it was mixing with memories, moments I had brushed off for years. They were slipping into place like puzzle pieces, forming a picture I had refused to see before. The way she sighed, God, the sighing, like I was exhausting just by speaking. The way she rolled her eyes mid-conversation, not even trying to hide it anymore. The small, clipped remarks, always said in a way that could be passed off as a joke but never quite landed like one. I had noticed these things before, of course I had, but I had never let myself dwell on them, because thinking about them meant admitting the truth. And I hadn't been ready for that. And then there was that night, months ago, when I had been walking past our bedroom while she was on the phone with her sister. I wasn't even paying attention until I heard her say it. Frank tries, but he just doesn't get it. I hadn't thought much of it then, just kept walking, brushing it off as casual venting. But now, standing here in this kitchen, my hands still wet from the dishes, my mind replayed it with perfect clarity. She had meant it. She had always meant it. This wasn't a bad night or a slip of the tongue. This was a pattern, a truth she had been saying in 100 different ways, and I had been too blind, too hopeful, too desperate to believe otherwise. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't her equal. I was her disappointment. The next morning I woke up different. Not angry, not sad, just aware. It wasn't some dramatic revelation, no big explosion of emotions. It was quieter than that. Like something had clicked into place overnight, and now there was no way to unsee it. For years, my life had been about making Donna happy. Every decision, every little action, I filtered through the same unspoken question. Will this be enough? Will this make her smile? Will this finally make her see me the way she used to? But that morning, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something. I was exhausted. Not just tired, drained. And for what? No matter what I did, no matter how much I bent, twisted, or rearranged myself, it had never been enough. So why was I still trying? I wasn't, not anymore. I got up, went to the kitchen, and started making coffee. The smell filled the house, a familiar comfort, but something was different this time. Normally I would have poured a second cup without thinking, setting it down on the counter before she even walked in. But today I didn't. I just poured my own, sat down at the table, and took a slow sip. A minute later, Donna walked in, her hair still a mess from sleep. She glanced at the counter, then at me, her brows pulled together slightly. "No coffee for me?" she asked, her voice light, but with an edge of expectation. I didn't look up right away, just took another sip before answering. Didn't realize that was my job. My voice was calm, neutral, but the weight behind it was different this time. She frowned. "What's with the attitude?" I shrugged. "No attitude." She stood there for a second, waiting, expecting me to cave, to get up and fix it, to fall back into place. When I didn't, she let out a small, exasperated huff and moved to make her own. The clink of the spoon against the cup, the rush of hot liquid, the small sound of her sipping. It should have been an ordinary moment. But it wasn't, because for the first time I had done nothing and it had unsettled her. It was small, a tiny thing, but for me it was the first shift. Later that day, she asked me to run to the store. "We're out of milk," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Can you grab some?" It was a simple request. Normally, I would have grabbed my keys before she even finished the sentence. But this time, I barely glanced up from the book I was flipping through. "Can't. Got things to do." She blinked, actually lifting her eyes from the screen. "You can't?" "No." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. For a second, I saw something unfamiliar flicker across her face. Confusion, like she wasn't quite sure how to process what had just happened. Finally, she scoffed under her breath. "Fine," she muttered, grabbing her purse. I expected the guilt to creep in, to feel that familiar weight pressing down on my chest. That's how it always worked. I'd say no, she'd react, and then the guilt would eat at me until I gave in. But not this time. This time I just exhaled and turned the page in my book. For the first time I felt relief. Over the next few weeks I kept pulling away. It wasn't a decision I made all at once, not some grand declaration in my head. It happened little by little, like a series of small shifts that, over time, changed everything. I stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. When Donna sighed dramatically because I didn't read her mind about something she wanted, I didn't rush to fix it. When she made some passive-aggressive remark about me forgetting to take out the trash, I didn't immediately jump up to do it. I had spent years smoothing things over before they even had a chance to turn into arguments. Now, I let them sit. I stopped over-explaining myself. Before, if I didn't want to do something, I'd scramble for reasons, justifications, excuses that might make her understand why I wasn't doing exactly what she wanted. Now, I simply said no. No explanations, no justifications, no trying to make her feel okay with my choices. And I stopped tiptoeing around her moods. That was the biggest one. Donna's moods had always dictated the atmosphere of the house. If she was irritated, I adjusted. If she was cold, I tried to warm things up. If she was distant, I closed the gap. But now I let her sit in whatever mood she was in. If she was sulking, fine. If she was irritated, okay. But I wasn't bending to it anymore. At first, she didn't even notice. That was the most surprising part. I had spent years making my whole existence about keeping her comfortable, and she was so used to me doing it that the absence of it didn't register right away. But then, she did. It started small. One night at dinner, I didn't bother filling the silence when she sighed and pushed her plate away, clearly waiting for me to ask what was wrong. Instead, I kept eating. She stared at me. "You're acting weird." I didn't look up. "Am I?" Another time she snapped at me over something insignificant, probably me forgetting to buy the exact brand of something she liked. Usually I would have said sorry on instinct, smoothed it over before it became a thing. This time I just shrugged and said, "Guess you'll have to get it next time." She narrowed her eyes. "What's wrong with you?" I took a sip of my drink. "Nothing." She studied me for a second like I was some puzzle she suddenly didn't know how to solve. A few nights later, she was in the shower. I was sitting on the couch mindlessly scrolling through my phone when I heard it, a soft chime from the coffee table. I glanced up without thinking. It was her phone. A message had popped up on the screen. "Can't stop thinking about you." My stomach dropped. At first I thought maybe I had misread it. Maybe it was a message from a friend, some inside joke. But as I leaned forward, the name on the screen made my blood run cold. Jason. I didn't know a Jason. Something in me hesitated, but my hand moved on its own. I grabbed the phone and unlocked it. The messages were right there, open, like she hadn't even bothered to hide them. "Wish I could see you again sooner," he wrote. "Me too. I hate how complicated this is," she responded. A slow, heavy pressure settled in my chest. I scrolled further, past more messages. Late-night conversations, plans to meet up, words that didn't belong to a married woman. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you," he texted. "I haven't stopped thinking about it either," she replied. My hand shook as I kept scrolling. The deeper I went, the more I uncovered. Dates, times, places, and then finally, the message that made my stomach turn. The first one. Nearly a year ago. They had been having an affair for almost a year. I felt sick. My vision blurred for a second, my chest tightening as I scrolled through dozens, hundreds of messages. The way she talked to him, the way she joked, the way she seemed so alive with him, like she hadn't been with me in years. And suddenly everything made sense. The coldness, the sighs, the resentment in her voice when she spoke about me. She wasn't just unhappy. She had moved on. While I was breaking my back trying to be enough for her, she had already found someone else. And I had been so blind. I was still sitting there, phone in hand, when I heard the water turn off. A moment later, Donna walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, rubbing her hair with another. She barely glanced at me as she crossed the room, heading toward her dresser. "Who's Jason?" The words left my mouth before I could even think about them. She froze. For a second, she didn't turn around. I could see her shoulders tense, see the way her grip tightened around the towel. When she finally did face me, her expression was carefully neutral, but I could already see the wheels spinning in her head, searching for a way out. "Frank," she started, voice controlled. "Why are you going through my phone?" I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "That's what you're gonna go with? Not even a denial?" She exhaled sharply, dropping the towel from her head. "It's not what you think." I held up the phone, screen still lit with her texts. "Really? Because it looks like you've been screwing this guy for a year." Her lips pressed together. She had no excuse, no lie quick enough to cover this up. "You were never supposed to find out." Her voice was quiet now, almost sad. "Wow." I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand over my face. "You don't even regret it, do you?" She swallowed, but she didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. I stood up, tossing the phone onto the table. "I'm done, Donna." She stiffened. "Frank." "Don't." I shook my head, stepping past her. "I should have been done a long time ago. I don't know why I kept trying, why I thought I could fix this." Her silence was louder than any answer she could have given. I grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter. "I'll call the lawyer." "Frank, please." But I was already walking out the door. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, legal meetings, and cold, detached conversations. Donna didn't fight me on the divorce. Maybe because she knew she had no ground to stand on. Maybe because she wanted it too. Either way, we didn't drag it out. It was almost too easy. She didn't apologize. Not really. There were a few half-hearted attempts. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was unhappy. You weren't paying attention to me." But they all sounded hollow. Excuses, not regret. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing I had already been gone long before I walked out that door. Looking back, the signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I had convinced myself that if I just tried hard enough, she would finally look at me the way she used to, that she would want me again. But the truth was, I had spent years trying to fix something that had already been broken beyond repair. I wasn't the man she wanted. Maybe I never had been. And now, I was finally okay with that. The last time I saw her, we were signing the final papers. She looked at me across the table, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I saw something in her eyes that almost looked like sadness. "You really just don't care anymore, do you?" I looked at her for a long moment, then set the pen down. "No," I said simply. "I don't." And just like that, I was free. Thank you for watching.